What makes a nation truly vulnerable? It's not always what you think. It's not always a big invading army. Sometimes the most powerful force is one you can't even see: foreign influence. We're going to dive into how a country's own internal fractures can basically throw the doors wide open for strategic manipulation from the outside.
So welcome to episode 26. To really unpack this whole complex dynamic, everything we're about to talk about is grounded in the incredible, exhaustive research of Zaheer Ahmad Meer. Our entire explainer comes directly from his major work, Quaid-e-Azam of Pakistan, and you have to understand this isn't just another history book. Meer presents it as a full-on constitutional, historical, and moral map. It's really designed to help us grasp the nation's founding principles and, maybe more importantly, to chart a course for the future by learning from the past. It's an absolutely essential source for this conversation.
And that really brings us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? How does a nation that was born with such a clear, powerful vision start to lose its way? It's a question that sets the stage for a really dramatic story of ideals clashing with reality.
Okay, so to understand what was lost, we have to go back and look at the original blueprint. Let's explore the foundational doctrine of independence as it was laid out by Pakistan's founder, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. The vision he had was incredibly clear, and he was totally uncompromising about it. Jinnah pictured a Pakistan that was, first and foremost, self-reliant and dignified. It had to be a state built on principles, totally sovereign in its economy, and completely 100% free from the strings of foreign control. This wasn't just some nice idea. He saw it as the core identity of the new nation. And this quote right here, it just brilliantly illustrates the very heart of his philosophy. Jinnah's warning is so direct, and it's absolutely timeless. No nation can rise that depends on others for its survival. Now, this wasn't about shutting out the world, not at all. It was about building a foundation of strength from the inside so that the nation could deal with the world from a position of power, not one of desperation.
So the goal was simple. Pakistan had to stand tall on its own 2 feet. The source material we're using puts it so powerfully. The nation was never, ever meant to lean on foreign crutches. True independence meant you had to walk without them, period. But that powerful doctrine, it started to fade. After Jinnah was no longer there, a whole new chapter began. And it was a chapter where the original vision was slowly forgotten, and these deep foundational cracks started to appear.
That decade right after 1948 was just a period of immense turmoil. Jinnah's death left this huge leadership vacuum, and that directly led to political instability, endless delays with the Constitution, and a growing, dangerous dependency on outside help for the economy. By 1958, the internal fragmentation, it had hit a breaking point.
This decline didn't just happen overnight. It was a sequence of events, like dominoes falling. It all started with that political instability, which was fueled by weak leadership. That, in turn, led to economic dependency, and from there, it spiraled into a state of total ideological confusion. The original clarity was just gone.
And this comparison just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you've got Jinnah's ideal: sovereignty, stability, self-reliance. And on the right, the harsh reality of that first decade: constitutional crisis, bureaucratic overreach, and a state that was defined by dependency and fragmentation. I mean, the gap between the vision and what actually happened couldn't be wider.
So what happens when a nation gets that fractured on the inside? Well, it sends out a kind of unintentional invitation. This is the exact moment where that internal weakness flings the door open for external influence.
And here it is. This is the central idea from our source. Honestly, this is the most crucial point of this entire explainer. Foreign influence does not enter through strength, it enters through cracks. Think about it. External powers don't need to waste energy breaking down a strong wall. They just have to find the cracks that are already there and then exploit them.
And that is exactly what happened. All that internal chaos in Pakistan, it turned the country into what the source calls an open arena for other powers who were looking for leverage in the region. The nation's internal problems became a golden opportunity for outsiders.
So why are we looking back at all this history? Because, according to the source, this whole foundational story holds a vital lesson that is just as relevant today as it was 70 years ago.
The key takeaway, the thing to really remember, is this. A nation's greatest defense against foreign interference isn't its military or its weapons, it's its own internal unity and strength. A house that isn't divided against itself can't be easily broken into. It's as simple as that.
So this leaves us with one final really crucial question. If those internal cracks are the real gateway for foreign influence, then maybe the most important work for any nation isn't just about defending it.
To the explainer, we're about to tackle a really big question today, one that's super important for understanding history. How does a nation, a country, actually lose its way? Let's get right into it.
Now this is a special one. This is the 26th installment in our deep dive into a single, absolutely fascinating source, as we continue to unpack the critical moments that shape a nation right from its very beginnings.
And our guide for this entire journey is the incredible research of Zaheer Ahmad Meer, specifically from his book, Quaid-e-Azam of Pakistan. We're pulling directly from his analysis to really get a handle on what was happening during this pivotal time.
So the book really centers around this one huge, challenging question that we're going to explore. How does a brand new nation, one born with this incredibly clear vision, start to drift? What are the forces from both the inside and the outside that can actually pull it off course?
Well, according to Meer's research, the first piece of the puzzle is found in an early economic decision. Think of it like the first door that was left unlocked, creating a vulnerability that would have consequences for years and years to come.
So in its early days, as the economy was being mismanaged, Pakistan's leadership basically came to a fork in the road. As you can see here, the choice was either tough domestic reform, buckle down and build from within, or seek foreign aid. And more, the path they took was the one with the helping hand from outside.
And this right here, this shows you the result. Meer's research puts it so bluntly with this quote: "Economic helplessness became Pakistan's first vulnerability and foreign powers' first opportunity." You see, this was never just about money. It was about creating an opening, an opportunity for influence.
So what did that influence actually look like in practice? Well, that aid came with what the book calls invisible strings. Suddenly, foreign powers were quietly helping to shape core national policies, everything from trade deals and diplomatic stances all the way to military priorities.
Now, this internal weakness, it didn't happen in a bubble. The backdrop to all of this, the global situation in the 1950s, was all about one thing: the Cold War. And Pakistan was about to get pulled into a much bigger game. In that giant chess match between the United States and the Soviet Union, Pakistan's location made it what you'd call a Cold War asset. I mean, both superpowers looked at the map and saw a nation that was incredibly valuable, a key piece on the board that could tip the entire balance of the region.
But it's really important to get how this fight happened. The author makes it clear this wasn't about tanks and soldiers. Instead, as the quote says, Pakistan became a battleground of interests fought through alliances, money, and some very clever diplomatic maneuvering.
And just like we saw with the economic aid, this new strategic role had huge effects. Notice the pattern here? It's almost the same as our earlier slide. Now, external influence was shaping security, defense deals, and even who was aligned with whom inside the country. The reach of that influence was just getting bigger and bigger.
Okay, so this brings us to the absolute core idea of the analysis. How do these two things, the internal economic choices and the external Cold War pressure, how do they come together? The book lays it out almost like a math problem, a powerful equation. The first part of that equation is internal weakness. The research is crystal clear on this. Foreign influence doesn't just take root on solid ground. It needs cracks, right? It needs pre-existing problems to seep into. Then you add the second variable to that mix, this immense external influence coming from global superpowers, who are actively on the lookout for exactly these kinds of opportunities to push their own agendas. And what do you get when you combine those two? The result is a national drift. It starts slow, you might not even notice it at first, but it's a fundamental shift away from that original, self-reliant path the nation was supposed to be on.
The whole thing is summed up perfectly in the single quote from the book. Foreign hands became powerful because local hands became weak. It's so important to get that one couldn't happen without the other. They were completely connected, two sides of the very same coin.
So what exactly were those weaknesses? Well, this slide lays them out. Foreign powers were able to take advantage of political fights that were already happening, the personal greed and ambitions within the leadership, and a growing sense of confusion about what the nation even stood for after losing its founder. This drift, this perfect storm of internal fragility and external pressure, well, it had some very real long-term consequences.
It started to raise these fundamental questions about the nation's entire path and its founding legacy.
When you boil it all down, the big takeaway from this analysis is this. That period marked a huge shift in the country's DNA. That original ideal of self-reliance was slowly but surely being swapped out for a new reality, one where big decisions were being guided and often influenced by outside forces.
And so we end this explainer with a question that really sticks with you long after you put the book down. It's a question for any country, at any time in its history, really. What is the true long-term cost of dependence?
Ever wondered what happens when a country starts with this incredible, powerful vision, but somewhere along the way it just loses the plot? That's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at the huge gap between what Pakistan was supposed to be and what it became. So just to set the stage, this is our 26th installment. Yeah, you heard that right. Our 26th deep dive into the incredible book Quaid-e-Azam of Pakistan by Zaheer Ahmad Meer. And look, we're taking our time with this, going chapter by chapter, because a book this important, well, you just can't rush it. It's not something you can cover in a quick summary. You've got to unpack it piece by piece. And the piece we're unpacking today, oh man, it gets right to the very heart of Pakistan's identity and its entire historical journey. So the book really makes you stop and think about a couple of really big questions. First, what was the original plan for Pakistan? What was Jinnah's actual blueprint? And maybe even more important, why are we still talking about this blueprint decades and decades later? Why does it feel so urgent right now? All right, so to figure out what went wrong, we've got to go back to the start. Let's really look at those foundational ideas, the core principles that were supposed to be Pakistan's North Star. Okay, so according to Zaheer Ahmad Meer's research, Jinnah's whole vision was built on these 5 really powerful pillars. First up, independence. And we're not just talking about waving a flag. We mean total economic independence. Next, dignity. The idea was for Pakistan to be a nation that the world respected because it stood firm on its principles. Then you've got neutrality and balanced diplomacy. Basically, be friends with everyone, but don't get tangled up in anyone's drama. Be beholden to none. And finally, strategic autonomy. This is a big one. It means having the complete freedom to do what's best for your own country, period. I mean, that was the dream, right? But, and this is a big but, as the author shows us, the path Pakistan actually walked, it was a world away from that blueprint. The gap between the vision and the reality, it's honestly pretty shocking. And here's where you can really see it, side by side. That dream of independence, it turned into being dependent on foreign aid. The goal of national dignity, that became a reality of being constantly influenced by outside powers. Neutrality? Nope. It became diplomatic vulnerability. And that all-important strategic autonomy, well, that turned into being strategically boxed in. The difference is just, wow, it's night and day. So you have to ask, how did this happen? Was it just bad luck? Was it inevitable? Well, the author's answer is a very clear no. It wasn't fate. It was a choice. And really, the book's whole argument boils down to this one powerful sentence. Foreign interference was not Pakistan's fate, it was the result of abandoning Jinnah's doctrine. I mean, that is a heavy statement. It puts the responsibility squarely on the decisions that were made. And the key takeaway here is that, according to the source, this foreign meddling wasn't some unstoppable force of nature. No, the book argues it was the direct result of walking away from those 5 key principles we talked about. Sticking to that original vision, that was supposed to be the country's shield. And this is where we get to the big lesson, the main point of all this. And honestly, it's a lesson about sovereignty that applies to any country, not just Pakistan. What the book concludes is pretty profound. And it's also a bit of a warning. It suggests that foreign powers don't just kick down the door. No, they wait for an invitation. And that invitation, it comes from the inside. It starts when a country's own foundations begin to crumble, when its sense of right and wrong gets blurry, and, most importantly, when its institutions start to weaken. And once that weakness is there, it's basically a welcome mat for outside forces to come in, start pulling the strings, and eventually take control. It's a really powerful reminder of where a nation's true strength, its sovereignty, actually comes from. So the bottom line is, a nation's sovereignty is only as strong as its own internal structures, especially its institutions. And that kind of leaves us with a huge question, doesn't it? If weak institutions are the open door for foreign control, which institutions are the most important ones to protect? Well, That's exactly where we're headed next time, when we dig into the chapter Judiciary and Justice, when the courts lost the Quaid's path. Hope to see you there.